talking with ex Kick Tracee singer Stephen Shareaux. Stephen, the reason I got in touch with you initially is I'd read on the internet that you're currently working on a new solo album. You want to talk a little bit about that?
That is correct, my friend. Yeah, man, a long time has passed. And I have, I guess, enough time's passed for my, I don't know, my mind, body, and spirit to, literally be ready to take on that endeavor. I guess it's one thing if if you're fortunate enough, I guess, to have been through it once before,
yeah,
you kind of know what it takes and what it's going to require as far as energy and whatnot. So, yeah, man, I'm living in Ojai, California, and things just seem to lined up, good for me right now, and I'm just embarking on making a solo record. I've got a guy named Bernie Larson. His last name's spelled Larsen, Bernie.
Okay.
Who's producing, and he's basically a session touring guitar player. He was out with Melissa Etheridge, Jackson Brown. He's got an amazing a bunch of experience, and he's produced many records. If you Google him, and you can find a whole lot about him. But we just, it's kind of it's a cool thing, man. We just met really at a coffee shop in Ojai there, literally no more than a few hundred yards from my house, and just kind of instantly had a vibe. And I'm like, he told me what he did, and I basically just said, look, I want to make a record. And he's like, dude, come by the studio, So literally within about a week, we kind of hashed out a deal, and no more than 2 or 3 weeks after that, we've got about 8 or 9 songs already in the can. So the chemistry really was just, I don't know, it was just an intuition, something about him, me, whatever. We just hit it off instantaneously, and we're literally from day one going in studio, we have been just, firing on all cylinders. A lot of magic, a lot of chemistry. And it's just the two of us making it, man. These are songs I've had, it's been, 20 some odd years since Kick Tracee record, Field Trip, or actually the one that never came out that we were in the middle of making, which, I don't know if you knew, but literally Kick Tracee, that film that just came out, Sound City?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that Dave Grohl just made, and it's about that studio. Well, Kick Tracee not only recorded Field Trip there, and it was produced by a guy named Chris Goss, who's also in that movie. He's the guitar player, singer, songwriter for Masters of Reality. But Kick Tracee also, we broke up in the middle of making our third, what was supposed to be our third full-length record there at Sound City. So I got a lot of, I got some, good kind of, just good memories and stuff about that place. But, it's been, like I said, about 25 years since that point, and I've never stopped writing, obviously. I mean, that's what I do. But as far as being in a band and doing that thing, I think I've literally done one. I've had a band called Rebel 8, which is REVEL, Rebel 8, the number 8.
Okay.
And that was around 98 to 2001 or 2 for about a few years. Some of that stuff can be found, we were shopping with all the labels, and it just didn't pop, I don't know, for whatever reason, the stars weren't aligned, no big deal. Maybe I just didn't want it.
Yeah.
Who knows? But nevertheless, man, I never stopped making music, and so a lot of these songs that I'm writing right now, ironically, a lot of them I've written literally maybe in the last, 2-3 months, but some of them are older, some of them are newer. At this point, I haven't really decided. I was debating, maybe redoing a Kick Tracee song, stuff like that. But I will see. I'm shooting for 12 titles, 12 tracks at this point, and I've got like I said, got about 3 more to go, and I'm pretty fired up, man. I'm stoked. It's just there's a lot of magic happening, dude.
And let me ask you, Steven, did your partner that you're doing the album with, did he know anything about you or Kick Tracee before he met you?
He did not, and that's a good question, and it's really a big reason why it appealed to me, because, I know a lot of guys, obviously that have home studios and, that know me and know where I came from and my whole thing and this, that, and the other, but part of me really, I've had opportunities to make records and I've recorded many songs and do stuff, but I don't know, something about the situation, I wanted an unbiased kind of, approach and someone who didn't know that history, because, let's face it, this isn't a Kick Tracee record.
Yeah.
I've evolved 20 plus years as an artist. It's rockin', it's pop, it's everything that is on a Kick Tracee record. Songs like Drop in the Ocean, there's the acoustic element, there's the rockin' element, so, people, I'm definitely not alienating the Kick Tracee fans by any means, but it's certainly a not distancing myself, but there's a definite distance between where I've been and where I'm going.
Yeah,
Also some similarities at the same time. So.
The reason I was asking is there must be some kind of, a little bit of a comfort level. The fact that he knew nothing about Kick Tracee or what you'd done before, where you don't have to really worry so much about going in the studio making a carbon copy of what you've done in the past. Maybe, if you were working with somebody who was a huge fan of what you've done in the past, he might want to make an album sounds exactly like Kick Tracee, or you were in the successful band at one time. Let's do more of that. But I think him knowing nothing about what you did before, there's a certain comfort level in that you're going to be able to do some, a little bit of everything, and whatever comes out is going to honestly come out.
Absolutely, completely agree with you, my friend. I might as well be, Kick Tracee. Fortunately, let's face it, we sold close to 250, I think, in the, 250,000 records. We definitely had some presence out there. The label dropped a lot of money on us and promotion. People knew we were out there. We were very fortunate at the time, but labels were spending a lot of money on bands. We were kind of lucky enough to be somewhat of a guinea pig and have, just a bunch of cash thrown at us. And, and which lays, even 20 years later, I have, yourself, this is the reason I'm talking to you is because of places, social media, Facebook, etc. I have people hit me up, probably even, in the last 5 years on Facebook to, still listen to Kick Tracee, love the record, when you doing something, next, big fan, etc., right on down the line. And it's so cool to know that and there's just still a little bit of a groundswell there, it's not, and I don't know, I'm just very grateful, man. It's very cool to have, some presence there built in, from that history, so, but I might as well be just at this point, I might as well be a completely unheard of dude, but, it's been that long, but anyway, I think people are still intrigued and interested, so I'm very grateful.
Again, like you said, even 5 years ago, the internet wasn't what it is today, and you can even when I was reading, Steven Shareaux, he's the guy who used to be in Kick Tracee. I wonder what he's doing now. I read you're working on a solo set, so I thought immediately, well, that'd be an interesting person to talk to, see what he's up to, and that's part of the reason, like you said, I reached out to you. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about Kick Tracee. Obviously, now I was curious, were you guys from LA, or did you come out to LA from somewhere else?
I personally came out to LA in 1987 from Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay.
I was born in Detroit, Michigan. Short stint with my family in Chicago area, and then we went to. My mom decided to go to law school, or actually she took the bar exam in Minnesota, and that's where my family now resides to this day. And I kind of call that home, but I've been in LA since '87, so half my life back in the Midwest, half, here in the LA area.
Yeah, and I would like to ask, what was that like, coming out here to LA, when you look back when you first did, and that must have been kind of like a huge culture shock, and talk a little bit about what the music scene was like back then, coming to LA and kind of living out your dream.
For sure, man. It was a trip. We had a family house out in Palm Springs, so I was kind of getting out here a little bit, and it wasn't like that big of a shock to me, but I think the biggest thing about it, for a kid like myself who was basically, back in the Midwest, if you're, into music or, singing in a band or whatever, and you're out playing clubs or doing gigs, you're doing like 2-3 sets of covers and maybe squeezing in, a song or two of an original, you know what I mean? So, and I used to cover all these, all those bands, Rat, and all those bands that were happening on the Sunset Strip, Motley Crue, which is a whole other story in itself. I'm sure you know of it.
Yeah.
All these bands that were happening on the Sunset Strip, so for a kid that was, singing those songs growing up, and then to finally actually be out and hitting the strip and doing that whole thing, Kick Tracee we were a valley band, we would pop into the strip and, play our gig at the Whiskey or the Roxy or whatever it was. We got signed out of the Coconut Teaser.
Okay.
So we would just kick ass and we would get the fuck out of there. I mean, we took it very seriously. I mean, at the time, I wasn't like, party dude or everything at that time for me, and even to this day, it really revolves around my voice and my body and my instrument, what I'm saying? When you're a singer, it's like, I never got into that whole, I don't know, sex, drugs, rock and roll. I mean, trust me, I dabble. I'm not like goody two shoes. But I'm just saying, we were very serious. Even as young as we were just like, we pop in, kick some ass, and we would get out of Hollywood. We didn't stay around, partying it up, and this, that, and the other. We got rehearsal in the morning, and we'd go back to work, So it was a good time, man. We didn't, I say that, I guess, because we didn't spend a lot of time, like, kicking around, and hanging out with other bands. I knew other guys and stuff, but, it was a cool scene. It seemed like everybody kind of knew something very special was happening. And for us, and for myself, it was a freaking dream for me, since I was 13 and I saw my first Kiss concert, man. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. I threw away the pack of cigarettes, whatever, that I smoked for a month and a half in junior high. From that moment on, I literally, I'm going to sing, I'm going to take care of myself, this is what I'm going to do, and to have that dream literally lead me out to Los Angeles, and, no more than a year and a half later, I'm signed to a major label, and we're, making videos, doing everything I ever imagined possible was happening, so it was magic, man. I was blessed, I still am blessed. It's amazing, it's been an amazing journey, man.
And let me ask you, Steven, of course, you guys got lumped in with a lot of those hair bands back in the day, and I was curious, would you say that, part of the reason the band was so successful, because like a lot of those bands, the image and the look was just as important to your success as the sound and the songs and everything?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I was asking, Kick Tracee, for example, you guys got lumped in with a lot of the hair bands and stuff, and I was curious, a lot of those bands back in the day, their image and their look was as big of a part of the band's success as the songs and the sound of the band. I was curious, was that as important to you guys, like a lot of the bands, were you told look a certain way, or was that just the way you guys naturally looked?
Well, for myself, for sure, it's how I'm definitely an image conscious dude, as far as, I'm not, I'm not like, hey, just go up there and sing a song, you know, with my blue jean. I mean, it's just not my thing. I kind of, I demand a little bit more out of a performer, and I don't know, I've always just liked that other element of a show. I just like another, like, you know, something else going on other than just standing up there singing tunes. That, in its own right, can also be powerful, you know, without a doubt. But I'm just, you know, again, I grew up, you know, with Kiss and you know, the Van Halen and the, you know, Ted Nugent, you know, people that were just coming on stage, or when they were on stage, they owned this shit. You know, they were just, they demanded your attention, you know, in some way, shape, or another. And you know, I don't know, these are the groups that just kind of shaped me. So I was, you know, and in that time, you know, it just seemed to be the thing. I mean, it was the hair metal band. You gotta have some hair, you know, rocking out.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, like you're saying, like you take a band like Kiss that's been around 40 years. You know, just the makeup and look. That's as big part of their show as anything else. And you know, if you take that away, you know, that's you know, a big part of a show. So you know, I always love bands like you're saying that put on a spectacle, you know, a show, and you know, because you know, you could just get up on stage and play the record note for note, but you know, that'd be very boring, you know. So you know, you're talking a little bit about Motley Crue. Now, I've read, like a lot of people, that you actually, when they fired Vince Neil back in '92, I heard you were one of the guys that they were strongly considered, and you actually auditioned for a band, and I guess they were really considering you up until the time they found John Corabi.
I did. It was, in fact, I believe I was probably the first guy called. And I don't mean that in any way, you know, like, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I'll never forget the call, because it was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I just, you know, whatever was going on, you know, the prior night or something. But, you know, to wake up and get a call from Nikki Sixx going, hey, dude, you know, wondering if you wanted to come down. You know, Vince left the band, and I'm like, I'm half asleep, thinking, gotta be shit, this is a freaking dream. What is going on there? You know, again, it's like, I grew up, you know, singing Motley Crue tunes, you know, Too Fast, all that Too Fast for Love stuff. The first record was just blew my mind, and so, yeah, no more than and you know, Kick Tracee at the time. I mean, we were like kicking some ass right there. We were peaking, you know. I think Field Trip had just, you know, kind of come out, and we were, you know, definitely gaining some momentum, and you know, it just kind of came at a time where it was like very, you know, kind of like, wow, okay. I mean, but who's going to turn down that opportunity even just to go in the room? So no more than a week later, I, you know, popped in there. I mean, I'll never forget it. It's like one of those things where it was a huge airplane hangar down in Burbank or something, and I've never ever rehearsed with a band that rehearsed so loud. Wow. It was like the hair on my arms were just standing up, and I was standing literally in like a circle of monitors, and you know, there's a sound guy there. They recorded everything. I was there for about 4 hours, and we were writing stuff, and you know, they just vibing it out. And, you know, I think they only ended up seeing like 4 or 5 guys. It was like myself, Mark Terrain from the Bullet Boys.
Wow.
Corabi was in there, and apparently it came down to myself and Corabi, and you know, I think he had more caps.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't have any, but no, regardless, man, it was one of those things, man. You know, personally, when I walked out of that room, man, I was on cloud 9. I was like, that was fucking cool. I mean, nothing could ever, but I knew driving away that it wasn't for me. I literally did not. I just knew those were shoes I just did not want to fill, and it was just something that I felt like that was enough for me. You know, I didn't need to go any further with that. It was good, man, but you know, I let the ship take velvet.
Wow. Yeah, cool. That's a great story, you know, to tell, you know, to be able to have to tell people. Now, let me ask, you're talking about, you know, you did actually some writing with them. Like when you got the initial call from Nikki, I was curious, like, did he tell you, hey, you know, when you come down here, bring some stuff you've written so we can kind of see, or did you guys actually get in the studio and write together?
It was just literally a 4-hour block, man. We just, they were playing stuff, I'm singing to it. I got my lyric book out, just, making stuff up, or, just kind of hashing things out, seeing how that writing process was going to go. Nothing, kind of got written in stone. I know that they were recording everything, so who the heck knows? I don't know. The album title, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was something like "Till Death Do Us Part." And to this day, I'm actually a little curious because I had a song, Kick Tracee's got a demo that dates back to probably, 1990, maybe even 89.
Wow.
Of a song called "Till Death Do Us Part." So I don't know if he stumbled upon a lyric of mine or something, or I said it or whatever, but, whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting because the album they ended up doing, they just ended up calling it Motley Crue, and there is a song in there, "Till Death Do Us Part," but again, so that's an interesting footnote. And another interesting thing I learned about you, Stephen, and doing research for this interview was, that I never heard before, was that you had actually auditioned for Velvet Revolver before it was actually called Velvet Revolver. I believe at the time it was just called The Project. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes. Again, the same manager who has I've been involved with a guy named John Greenberg, who's just always championed my cause. He got me in the room basically with those guys, and it was a strong enough audition to where they gave me about 3 songs that were basically board tape with no lyrics or melody on them, and I basically just took them and threw them into my 8-track, and I wrote and recorded vocals and melody to about 3 songs, and all of this whole process was actually being filmed for a TV show called what was it called? It was on VH1. It aired something like, it wasn't a Behind the Music, but it was like,
I know you mean. Yeah, I think I remember. I can't remember the name either, but I could possibly look it up. But yeah, okay.
But I got VH1 cameras following me around. They came to my house. At the time, I was living in a tree house in Venice. I've actually lived in 2 different tree houses in my 20 plus years in California. But nevertheless, they were following me around at my work and my home. And so then every time I showed up to the studio, the first time I showed up, I got these cameras following me. I'm hooking up with Slash. He's like, "So what you got?" And I'd show him the song called "Soul Shine." And, I handed off the CD to him. I turned around and I left. And it was like no more than 30 minutes later, my managers give me a call. He's like, "Dude, they're freaking blown away, man. They literally had no idea."
Wow.
And it was just I don't know. It was a kick-ass song. So they gave me 2 more songs to work on, and I did those. And if you see, it's called Inside Out. It was called Inside Out. The making or the search for a singer for Velvet Revolver. Velvet Revolver's Inside Out.
Okay.
And it basically came down to myself and another guy named Stephen, ironically, who was from London, England.
Wow.
And the show aired on VH1. You can see the whole story there. But basically, I forever became the guy the stripper girl guy, because I wrote some lyric, or some chorus or some hook or on one of the songs that that I followed up with, and it was something like stripper girl or stripper something. And I'll never forget Matt Sorm in the TV, in the show going, "Stripper girl." And then, and that basically was the end of my Velvet Revolver. Again, to be considered for that, and, have that come down to myself, the bottom line is they always wanted Scott. They were always kind of gunning for him.
Yeah.
And, but to be one of the guys, that comes, runner up, I can give a shit, man. It's all good in my book, man. It's very cool to throw down with those guys.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, the way things played out. They ended up parting ways with him. Have you been in touch with any of those guys, or even put the feeling?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. And
No.
Getting back to Kick Tracee a little bit, I'd like to ask, another interesting footnote in your history is, I believe you guys were produced by Dana Strum. Did he produce your actual album, or was it the demo he produced?
No, he produced the full length, the first record, No Rules.
Okay.
It was originally, it's a funny story how Dana got involved with it. We were originally Bob Ezra was pitched to do the record. I don't know if Bob Ezra is like Alice Cooper,
Kiss.
Boy the Wall.
Wow.
Just a famous producer, dude.
Yeah.
And at the time, I guess Bob and Dana had kind of hooked up. And Dana was, up and coming production dude, and had, just kind of creatively on fire. And Bob and Dana, right around that same time, they started talking about doing some sort of a co-production, co-producing type of a project.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, Kick Tracee became that project. And so for about 2 weeks there, the two of them were showing up, to our rehearsals. And then all of a sudden, it just became Dana, and we were perfectly fine with it. It was just kind of, played out that way. And, Dana at the time was, literally the Slaughter record was breaking. I don't know if you remember that stuff or not.
Oh yeah. It was very big at the time. Yeah. Flight of Angels. Yeah. Up all night. Yeah.
So I was popping around. We got most of the record done in a few studios in LA, but like those vocals, I was literally on the tour bus rolling around with Slaughter, like town to town. We were checking into a studio. I would lay down some vocals, trying to finish the tracks for the Kick Tracee record. So it's kind of a wild way to make a record, but hey man, it worked. So it was great.
And I was curious now, talking a little bit about how the band fell apart. Was it just kind of at the time when the grunge scene was hitting, and that had a lot to do with it, or do you think the band had just run its course?
I think there's some truth to both. I think both. Definitely the band. It really just wasn't fun anymore for I don't think any of us. It was when songwriting becomes like pulling teeth, it's just not it's not coming easily, and it's becoming very difficult. And everybody just had a lot of everyone was just kind of in their own head and had all their own issues and different things going on. I mean, we were a young band, man. We had a lot of when you get thrown that kind of money and things are set up in a certain way that maybe would kind of at the beginning kind of cause a little resentment. When you start dealing with a lot of money and people are getting a little less than another guy, and et cetera, et cetera. It creates. You just don't know how to deal with it when you're that young, man.
Yeah.
We're not business guys, I never even was remotely interested in the literally the business of music.
Yeah.
I just make music, and everything else follows, because of that passion, So it just wasn't fun anymore, man. I don't know how else to really put it.
Okay. I hear you.
My only real regret, if I have any, and I don't really have any, but would be that I just wish someone, including myself, would have just. I have 4 tapes and demos of about 10 songs, of the next record, Kick Tracee record that was about to be released. We literally just had to roll our gear out of a pre-production. We had to roll our gear across the alley into the record, into the studio and start recording. I mean, we just got really impatient.
Yeah.
We had a major producer, Garth Richardson, who just came off the Rage Against the Machine record, but Chili Peppers engineer. I mean, he was, we were happening, and shit wasn't popping, and no one had the presence of mind, be it management, label, publishing, or anyone in the band, including myself, to just step away objectively and go, listen, guys, you need to put your shit aside and get this record done. I mean, we're sitting there looking at 10 songs, how do you walk away from that? You know, we literally broke our contract with RCA. It just wasn't cool. You know, we should have just finished the record. And I for one am not a person who lives by woulda, shoulda, coulda. You know, I just don't like those three words. So it's a hard one to swallow. I still, to be honest with you, I still intend to. I want to release those tunes. I either want to go in and re-record them. You know, it was a record that was going to be called Center of Attention. Which is Center of Attention. Like Tension.
Okay.
Fittingly, that's what was happening. There was a lot of tension, a lot of shit going on, but it was producing music, and I wish we just would have recognized, hey man, let's get this shit done.
And I was curious, I was going to ask you about that. You're talking about wanting to release that material. I mean, there's still probably certain percentage of your fans, if you were to put that out, would go out and buy it. It might not be as big of a hit as it once would, but I was curious, like, do you own the rights to all your music, or is that in the hands of a record label? Like, would you be able to release that stuff if you wanted to?
I'm negotiating, and I'm actually in communication with Sony BMG right now, who at this time own and probably will forever own our masters. But I'm communicating with them because I'm trying to find out about getting the Kick Tracee stuff, up on iTunes and all the digital releases, and they're actually coming back at me saying if you're interested in doing another re-release, either vinyl or a physical reissue or anything. So they sound open to getting this stuff, available via the digital, thing, iTunes, and then also, some physical maybe re-releases as well, be it vinyl or CD or whatever else. So, I get people literally on Facebook going, where can I buy this stuff? Well, the old Kick Tracee stuff. There's nowhere I can tell them other than I think eBay. Which is nutty.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of interesting thing about a band like you guys. Like, your records are probably out of print pretty much, except for like people got it that are trying to sell it. But what's that like to know that we made all this great music, but it's that hard to find? I mean, and I guess if somebody wanted it bad enough, they could find it. That must kind of be almost like your music, kind of like a treasure chest, a lost treasure.
It's kind of like that, and I don't even really own it.
Yeah.
It's a crazy business, man. It's not a business that's designed to really benefit the artist. I mean, it's a music business. And to this day, I'm not even going to pretend I know how it works. I feel like, to be honest with you, I feel like I'm the same kid 5 years ago, whatever, with the same dream, with the same idea as how, it works. It's like, you write songs, you put a band, you record them, you put a band together, you rehearse them, you go out and play them, and you sell it live, man. It's like, that's what I know, It's like, there's no other, you just go out there and you fund the shit and sell it.
Yeah,
That's basically what I'm doing right now. Is I'm creating and building the vehicle for me to go out there and put a new stuff and display the stuff live and sell it live. There's no other better way for me to do that.
Yeah, and let me ask you, what do you think of bands like even like Def Leppard, who've had trouble with getting the digital rights to their songs, so that instead of fighting with the label, they just go and re-record all the classic hits, and then that way they own all the rights to the newly recorded stuff.
I don't know anything about it, man. It sucks. What God?
Yeah.
Whenever you can't get a hold of, if I understand your question correctly, but.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm asking is, there are bands that, they don't even own the rights to their music, and a lot of these old classic bands, such as Def Leppard, they are going with, and re-recording some of their classic material just so they can own the rights. And like in Def Leppard's case, the guy that, the guitar player that originally appeared on the songs, he's dead, so they got somebody else, so it's not even like, it's just a new recording. So it kind of, to me, takes something away from that classic song. You can re-record it, but there's something special about the original recording, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Oh, of course. That's what makes those songs and those records so special. I mean, yeah, obviously, the production, the time, the spirit, the energy. I mean, you can't reproduce that stuff. You can re-record the song, but you're not the same guy to a certain extent. You don't sing the same way to a certain extent. You don't play the same way. It's different members in the band, two different guitar players.
Yeah.
It's like, but good on them for doing that. I mean, they're great tunes. Man.
Yeah.
I love Def Leppard, man. Always will.
And let me ask you, Stephen, talking a little bit about the stuff you're recording now. I was curious if you're recording it like the new modern way, where everything is you're recording like the bass parts and all the guitars and all the vocals separate, or do you record like the old-fashioned way with everybody in the room together recording?
Well, it's a little both, because I mean, when I say everybody, it's literally two of us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
So a track typically gets started by me either laying down a scratch guitar or a piano track, and then I just commit to I come in with a song and I commit to an arrangement, and I'll play that all the way through, and then that's basically our guide, and we just start painting and laying on everything else. Bernie's playing about 98% all the drums on there. I got a couple different guys playing some bass, but otherwise he's playing all the bass. I'm playing some guitar. I'm not your traditional singer-songwriter guy.
Yeah.
I play enough of an instrument, either guitar or piano, to write.
Okay.
And I'm really just trying to create that vehicle for me to just go out. I don't want to have to play guitar. I don't want to. If I maybe on a song or two tops, I'll play a piano on some stuff at this point. But I know what I do best, and that's I'm at my best when I'm holding a mic, doing my thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's really what I'm trying to do. Just make that happen. But it's all live. We're doing the Pro Tools thing. I'm probably going to end up mixing it to tape, which will add a little warmth to it. And that's just a sound that I particularly like. And that's what's happening, man.
Okay, and then I was curious, so right now you're working on the album and getting that recorded, but any chance you might be doing any live performing, or are you going to work on the record first and then concentrate on doing the live shows later once the album comes out?
That, I believe, is the way it's going to go. I'm really concentrating on getting this record done. Like I said, I'm kind of like building a machine. I just feel like once you have the goods, I can hand that to anybody that I might feel interested. I might want to have in my band.
Yeah.
Or, if they're interested in being in it, I just go, here it is, learn it, I'll see you in the rehearsal room in a week, we'll show up and pull it together and start putting the gig.
Yeah, and you were talking a little bit about the business side of things, and the music business has, of course, changed a great deal since the Kick Tracee days. So, I mean, even back in the Kick Tracee days, you had a label behind you. You had these big-time producers like you're talking about. You had the label and other people offering you up money and telling you what to do. But these days, like you don't have a label. You're like a lot of musicians these days. You're funding everything pretty much yourself. You get to make the decisions. Everything's coming down basically to you. What's that like for you? Not having the big machine behind you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm appreciating it because it's a learning experience and a learning curve, and it's nice to have to fire myself from certain jobs, and hire other people to do other things. It's like, to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. But again, I'm not going to pretend I know what the music business is a big giant mystery box to me. It's like to me, it's like you do what you love, and the money and the other things hopefully will follow, or it'll just I got to follow my passion. I have no other choice but to to do this record, I'm taking a giant leap of faith, man. Just trusting the universe and everything else, you know, the fan base that I had, reaching out to the people like that just to start spreading the word, man. I mean, I have such a solid and the coolest, you know,
fans,
people and fans that have stuck by me for so many years. It's so, I just find that so cool, man. It's a remarkable thing, you know, because I'm a fan of, like, be it Kiss or be it, you know, whatever bands I'm into, man.
Yeah.
I'm that kind of fan, you know. I'm loyal, you know, and I appreciate that loyalty. So I'm gonna build it. I'm gonna put it out there, and hopefully we start a little bit of wildfire, you know, get a spark going, and, you know, fan the flames, and, you know, pretty soon we got ourselves a brush fire.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the great thing about it is, you know, guys like you know, you made a little bit of a name for yourself, and you're still out there doing it after all these years. And you know, there's, you know, you're in a place now where you're pretty much doing everything on your own. At the same time, there's a cool factor in that you don't have somebody telling you what type of songs you should be. You can write any style song you want. This is your album. You get to decide the direction of the album. You get to decide, you know, how you're gonna dress on stage. And at the same time, if it's successful, then you're the one that gets to, you know, all the financial gain. You don't have a label stealing, you know, more of the money, you know, where they get more of the money than you do, you know. So the music business, I think, is kind of cool the way it is. You got to work a lot harder for it, but the musicians are able to be more creative and keep more control of their music these days, you know.
Yes, sir. And with all due respect, no one ever told me how to dress on stage.
No, but you know what I mean. Even you hear these professional musicians, like, you know, back in the day, you know, like you would release a real loud rock anthem, and then the second single would be a power ballad, and we had to, you know, have eyeliner and all this, you know, and all this stuff. That's just how it was done back in the day, you know. Like you're saying, I'm just saying, there's a lot more freedom these days, you know.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, there was definitely that formula. Hit them with the hard rock track, and then, you know, the power ballad, and then another, you know, and you know, some of that still, you know, rings true. You know, I mean, you know, it depends on, I guess.
It works.
I'm a feel guy, you know. So whatever I feel, and it's like you said, that is probably the most, you know, joyful and kind of beautiful thing about this experience is that I'm not, you know, overthinking or even, you know, second guessing anything. I mean, it's just been an effortless kind of just process. You know, there hasn't been one, like, you know, hiccup of, I don't, you know, of course there's a couple of moments, but it really is just like just flown out of, you know, me and Bernie, and it's just happening very quickly and with a lot of ease, man. And that's a good sign for me.
So do you have a timeline for this, or is it just kind of like when you got the best material and enough material to put out an album, that's when it's going to happen, or do you predict it'll come out in the next year or so? What's your prediction?
No, I'm definitely trying to have this out before. I mean, it's close to being done. I need to, you know, literally I'm going to record probably track another 2 or 3 songs, and then I'm into mixing and mastering. So I'm on like about a 3-month plan. You know, I think if you in my Indiegogo campaign, which was a lot of fun to run.
Yeah, did you?
I think on there I put September 16th.
Okay.
You know, that I would deliver by then. So that's kind of an official date. It happens to be my birthday. So
wow, cool.
I'll give myself a birthday gift.
Yeah, cool. And talk a little bit about that campaign. I mean, have you been receiving a lot of funds? People have been making a lot of you know, donations to that.
Yeah, well, that particular campaign's over. I may run another one for, like, you know, promotion, marketing kind of thing, you know, maybe put it up just to keep the visibility out there. I guess, you know, it just, when that thing's happening, it's certainly keeping people, you know, abreast of things that are happening and whatnot. So, I mean, it's an odd concept for me, you know, like I said earlier in this conversation. I mean, I never got into music to make money, man. It's a weird thing, but, you know, it's kind of a new approach to it's kind of an indie approach to, getting some support and contributors to get behind you, keep the fans involved, and it just felt right. I mean, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. Although, initially I was like, that's kind of weird, I mean, I don't know, man, I just want to make the music and people, let people deal with the money, etc. But it's been cool, it's gotten me in touch with, the fans and old fans and new fans. So in that respect, I'm really grateful.
And let me ask you, have you reached your goal? Did you surpass it, or where are you with that?
I did not reach my goal, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah,
and
okay.
Any contribution that's made on that campaign is going to be put towards the budget.
Okay.
I came up with half of it already on my own, so obviously I came up with enough of it to get this thing started. I'm just looking for any extra help that I can get, just to ease that ease the strain of coming up with it myself. But and it's a way to for people to pre-order the record. Really, it's just like they're guaranteed to get a copy of it first before anyone else.
Oh, okay.
And that's it's cool. That's kind of how it's going to go down. So
that's cool because it's
I made $2,000.
Wow.
I'm so grateful about of my goal. So.
But even though you didn't reach your goal, I mean, think about that for a minute. $2,000. Enough people donated $2,000 towards your album. That's a pretty cool. And like you said, if you stop and think, Kick Tracee hasn't been around almost 25 years, and yet you still got enough of a fan base that people donate that. So I think that says something right there, Stephen. And it's a little for anybody that hasn't heard of. This campaign's a lot like Kickstarter, and you're saying, you kind of felt funny about asking people for money, but, another interesting thing you may or may not know, like talking about Kickstarter for a little bit, Frankie Banali, he raised, he surpassed whatever his goal was, but he raised a ton of money, and they're currently putting together like a Quiet Riot movie, a documentary about from a time he actually joined the band up until the time Kevin DuBrow, passed away, but and he raised all this money, and so that's one of the biggest Kickstarter successes, for example. So I know you're very busy, Stephen, and it's been great talking to you, but before I let you go, I just want to ask you, last thing about Kick Tracee, I was curious, have you been in touch with any of your former bandmates? Has there ever been talk of maybe doing a reunion or, at least a few shows together?
There was about, not long ago, I of all the guys, I keep in touch with Greg Offers more than anyone. I guess his family and his, he was kind of I guess you want the ringleader or whatever of the band. The four of those guys were all from California, and I was the outsider, if you will, is the foreigner coming from the Midwest. But, so I've kept in touch with him more than anything, but I got in touch with Rob Grant not long ago. Rob's the bass player, and he's had, a couple of bands that's been successful with a few things. He had a band called Superfine. I know he had a track with Buffy the Vampire Slayer and this and that. And I know everyone's still doing music. I just keep in touch with Greg more than anything. But Rob and I guess a guy got a hold of him, that had something to do with re-releasing, the record I was talking about earlier, which was Center of Attention.
Okay.
Putting that out on some, hair metal, some website. I can't remember what it was for, but that started the talk of, well, how about some shows? And so we kind of dabbled a little bit. Maybe the fact that, I'm doing this record and this is going to come out, maybe maybe we can, find some time or a date or something where we'll pull something together. I certainly wouldn't put it out of the question at all.
Okay, well, we covered pretty much everything you'd like to talk about. Is there anything else you're working on, Stephen, that you'd like to let us know about?
Man, that's, to be honest, man, that's all consuming at this point. That's my goal, and my focus at this point is this record. But I can't thank you enough, Jason, for reaching out to me and doing this interview, brother.
Well, let me tell you again, this is for an online magazine, and actually what we're going to do is we're going to have two versions of the interview. One's going to be a print version, and it's going to kind of be the edited highlights, and then and I'll send you the link for that, and then like I said, I recorded the actual audio for this, so actual audio is going to go up totally unedited, which I like to do. People can kind of hear, out of your mouth and my mouth what was actually said word for word. And so when they go up, probably going to go up sometime between May and July. I'll let you know as soon as it goes up. And please, when the album drops, or if you ever want to do this again, because you've really been great to talk to, and I gotta say, like I was telling you, Kick Tracee is an interesting footnote. You guys are one of those bands that you made a little bit of a splash and came, didn't quite make it huge, but like you said, you got enough fan base still, and I was kind of interested to see what you were doing. So thanks for taking time to do this. I can't thank you enough, Stephen, and I'll be emailing you when I know this is going up for sure, and that's so please keep in touch with me, and anytime you want to do this, we can do it.
Right on, my friend. I cannot thank you enough either, Jason. I again, much gratitude. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks again, and take care of yourself.